What's up? What's
It's
up?
your favorite long distance besties.
I know. Here we are back again for more, together this time. So this will
Mhm.
be a really fun episode. You get to see our dynamic and just
Mhm.
listen to us yap. So just, sit, enjoy, come for the ride. Today we have a really fun topic for you guys. We are going to be talking about the box office flop, but what is, won several Oscars in my mind. Catwoman with Halle
Mhm.
Berry, 2004. The movie was truly ahead of its time. So if you haven't watched that movie, go watch that movie, give it the attention it deserves, watch it in your right mind now as, now in 2024.
Yes,
Oh,
it's
it's
really.
2025. But
I know.
whatever, I'm still forgetting, bro. Oh
No,
my God.
literally same.
Anyways,
Yes,
yeah,
I
I love
love
the movie as a
that.
kid. So watching it again
We
as an adult
watched
was
this.
like,
We watched this movie once before, like when we were both kids. So now
yeah.
watching it, like in our 20s, it's very interesting.
It was a transformative experience. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
it
Like
really
that was
is.
movie 8. It's like
It
so
did,
undeserved.
and it was rated low on Rotten Tomatoes, so we could talk about that.
I'm not gonna lie, those people don't
This
know what they're
movie
doing.
immediately went over their head.
Yeah, I think they just missed the entire plot. So if
And
you go ahead,
oh, and it's so funny because it plays into the movie Men Missing the
nah, for
as a
real,
movie. Literally.
literally.
Because it's the same thing they did with the
So
Barbie movie plot.
they rated that low on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, not that they rated it low, they just missed the plot. Went over
Yeah, I think it went
their
over a lot of people's heads. I don't know how, but it showed in the award show. But anyways, I think if you were looking for something that was supposed to be like canon to like Batman or whatever, then I guess you'd be disappointed. But this may as well be an indie A24 film. Like this is
head.
really its
Yes.
own standalone
Its
film. So
own
just let it
standalone
rock.
film, period.
Anyhow, so we're here to talk about that today. There's so many themes to be explored in that movie, ranging from what it is to be feminine, what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a cat woman.
Mhm.
We're
And just,
constantly being threatened.
yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, and just the transformation of womanhood and being coming into yourself.
The
So,
duality of it all, because, we're constantly being threatened, especially, I don't know if it's just this day and age or whatever, also, but just, our youth is like constantly dangled in front of us,
I
like some
mean,
bait on a hook, something to be
literally,
chased after. So
yes.
this is a really refreshing movie. So settle in. We're gonna discuss and dissect. Okay.
Like,
Oh, where to start?
mhm.
I guess I need to give you a quick overview of the plot in case you have seen it already. Basically follows our main character, Halle Berry, who is Patience.
Mhm.
And she is this artist. She lives in New York. So if you're an artist in New York, you know how that goes. But she's working as like a graphic designer for this like corporate beauty industry, who's literally profiting off of their toxic chemicals harming women. Where have
Mhm.
we seen that before? I don't know. So she finds this out and she's constantly already being mistreated at her job. And her finding out what's going on behind the science of all of these skincare really is the last mark. And they have her killed, or at least so they thought, because she's brought back to life by
Mhm.
cats. If that isn't gold, I don't know what is. Amazing plot.
Maybe.
So with that rebirth, Catwoman is born, and we see her go through the trials and tribulations of her new personality and her stepping into herself in a completely different light, in a much more assertive light. She's coming to play. She's putting her foot down. So
Mhm.
we're just gonna explore what all of that really means. And what that did for women,
Yeah,
because this movie does a lot for women, and we don't talk
it
about it
definitely
enough.
does. I think the whole plot just brought light to transformation, womanhood, what it means to step into your true identity, and all the trials that come with that. So,
Yeah, so let's just jump in. So in the beginning of the movie, we see Patience, and she's a very shy, slightly insecure, just jittery person who doesn't seem to be very sure of herself, and she just lacks like general confidence. You can tell just by how she carries herself. So as we go on to see her die, she did die. She was brought back in a completely different light where she just had this surge of confidence and self-esteem that we didn't see in her previously.
at all.
So it was very interesting to see the whole transformation.
So she carried herself with a sense of unsureness and reluctantness. But I think it was really her reluctantness to embrace her true self and embrace who she actually is. Because we see throughout the film, she has her besties with her, constantly reassuring her of herself and her self identity. But you constantly see her kind of knowing who she is, but crawling back into a shell. And this kind of reflects into like what a lot of women do. Like we know who we are, but we're scared to step in our true confidence and self-assurity simply because of fear of being too bold, being too loud, being too seen. So I
Mm.
think this film just showed how we see a transition of a woman being like, you know what? This is who I am. That's okay.
You know what? Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. So I love that for
Yeah. I really like that point that you made because I think it really plays into the idea that sometimes people have to bring something out of you before you can really see it in yourself. Because
yes.
looking outside, and Patience is obviously like a very beautiful woman, she's very talented, and everybody seems to be able to see that except for her.
Yes.
So it isn't until she is literally removed from this realm that she is
Yes.
brought back with a sense of assurity to let her finally realize who she really is and what she has to offer for
Exactly.
herself and just in general because she
Mhm.
was amazing.
And I think it's very transformative that she literally had to die, like you said. It's kind of like when you realize this whole thought of rebirth and who you really are, you really have to shed away the existence of
The
the
old
old person
you,
you
yeah,
were to really truly
to
be able to
become
step fully into that new person. Or else you're going to always, have those same traits that you had in the past until you really let them go. You're just going to be the old person. So,
And what I really like about this movie is that it wasn't even just about releasing herself of her old person, but more so just integrating who she always
who
was
she always
into
was.
into the light, you know,
Yes.
because all of these traits were just severely suppressed, which is something that a lot of women go through with our desires and our needs. They're constantly being overlooked. Even in her workplace, the ideas that she was pitching, they were ignored, and even
Exactly.
the simple tasks that she was supposed to complete just weren't appreciated enough. So she was never really given the space or the resources to really let herself be free and
Mm,
explore what that could look like for her in a creative manner, in a physical manner, emotional, altogether. So
yeah.
it was
And
just
I
an
think,
integral part of her.
yeah, and I think it goes into also like her using her voice. Because even if you think about the
Mm,
film, the times where she spoke up, that was how she really felt. But that
that's
was
true.
only after she transformed and had that
Mm,
death and resurgence. So it kind of just goes into women are often not only silenced, but that we silence ourselves out of
mm,
fear of objection from other people
dismissal.
or dismissal and all those things.
Yeah.
So it just kind of showed that she stood her ground and she was very confident in her word, no matter who agreed or not. Okay.
And that's on doing things while scared. Because even when we
I
think
love
about that scene where you're referring to, like when she was
Yes.
finally standing up to her boss, literally right after he left, he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it."
Nobody
But like, yes,
was
you did mean it.
Yes, you did.
Yes,
But
you
I
did
loved how
mean
she went to herself and she was like, wait, I did mean it.
it.
I
Yeah, she said,
did.
like,
And
wait.
she found power in realizing, oh my gosh, I
Exactly.
spoke up for myself for the first time. And it feels very good. So it was
Mhm.
like we saw her experience like stages of confidence and also drawbacks
It's
because
a
it's not
practice.
linear.
Yeah, it's not. It's a practice. She was constantly coming back
Exactly.
to herself.
Hmm.
And, it's something she'd been living that way for such a long time
Yes.
that stepping into this identity of having these overwhelming thoughts of assertiveness and just it was not in her comfort zone. You could see
Yes.
that very clearly.
Exactly. And I do
Yeah.
want to highlight this. If we think about the film and where she was at, she was talking about how she doesn't even feel like a true artist because she's working in advertising.
No.
It's not even truly what she wants to do. So not only is she not where she is wants to be in life, but she's also silencing herself while not being where she wants to be in life. So that
Yeah.
just shows this duality of like she just fully is submissive to this life of unfulfillment, you know?
Yeah,
So when
exactly.
she actually took the first step to stand up for herself, that's when everything else in her life followed. So it's like
Mhm.
just like us in life, it literally is just one step of you just standing up for yourself. It's just one segue into becoming your true self because everything in your life will begin to change once you stand up for yourself. And it's like a domino effect Makes sense.
Yeah. And it's not because of anything that happened to her externally. All of that experience did was bring forth who she already was.
Yes,
She was just needing to like step into that and
literally.
lean into that more.
We
And we
have to
can
talk
actually
about
see
that.
that. We can talk about that
Yes.
because I
Very,
feel like this whole movie was really just about like the duality of women, but more specifically, the duality of masculine and feminine energy and balancing that in yourself. Because
and
we can see, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was saying, and where that comes with the subconscious and unconscious mind, where that masculine and femininity also lies within too.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So I feel like throughout the movie we see her in two different states, constantly battling with herself and her subconscious and her conscious mind, whether that was waking up one morning and stealing, finding a whole bunch of jewelry on her bed, or the next day
Literally.
just running late to things, consciously
Yes.
having her mind scattered. So I just feel as though that was a really good play on like masculine and feminine energy. Like when she was first introduced, she was really nervous and jittery and just, just all over the place. And I feel like she was just a little too in her feminine, just a little too used to being submissive and being walked all over to the point where it led her to self-destruction in a way. So when she's now coming into her masculine, it's a little bit too much at first to the point
Yes.
where it's like a lack of control and
Yes.
it's just kind of explosive.
Yes.
So the whole movie we watch her just kind of balance it
Literally.
throughout the
That is a great take because at the
her
beginning,
whole discovery.
super in her feminine, the middle, super in her masculine. Then she
Yeah,
learns how to marry those two
how to
together,
balance it.
balance it,
Yeah.
the whole person.
And I did want to bring up there's this little there's these two archetypes that the psychotherapist Carl Jung has called anima and animus. So anima is the inner feminine side of a man, whereas animus is the inner masculine side of a woman. So when we think about feminine and masculine energy, we typically place gender onto it, but it really has nothing to do with gender. It's really just about energy. So what I liked about this movie is that we can see visually like what it looks like to be more in your masculine and your feminine.
Yeah.
And I bring it back to this. There's some random person on Reddit. He made an amazing point. Said one way of becoming aware of the anima and animus is through projections. We project these inner qualities onto real men and women and then act as if these people were like our projections. And that quote stood out to me because masculine and feminine energy are just that energy. So when we're basing our ideas of what this energy is onto people of different genders or different sexes, you can see how it's become so detrimental because in the movie, women, and especially in her place of work, they're seen as nothing but a spectacle. They're just there for beauty.
Literally.
And when they're not beautiful enough anymore, they're cast aside. And that's supposed to be feminine. That's what's passed, that's what's pushed on to us.
Mhm.
Whereas you can see with patience, when she's integrating her masculinity, she's learning to become a bit more of a organized and controlled person. She's not as like, you know, all over the place and scattered. So, but she still uses that creativity and her intuition to guide her throughout the film to balance out both energies. So I just thought that was a really cool point because it just goes with our gender roles in society and everything. Just how that stuff is really just more of a social construct than an inherent energy.
Immediately. I completely agree. And I love how you pointed out how they just cast away the women at basically 40 years old is when you're oldest.
No, literally, and she's good.
And she looked
She
great.
doesn't have a wrinkle on her.
Amazing. I mean, she was
Good.
using that cream, the cream that
She
was,
was using
you know, and I think we should have delve into the fact that she was using a cream that she knew was detrimental to her health and well-being in order to stay and keep this idea of beauty and youth,
Mhm.
acting as
Mhm.
if that's where her womanhood lies and that's where her inherent value lies, is in her youth. Wow.
Mhm.
We see with Ophelia, which is a woman that Patience was using to help her and guide her through this journey that she's on, understood that her value is not in her beauty, her values in her mind, and her value is how she can help the world with using her mind. Like,
Mhm.
even throughout the film, like Ophelia, I'm not sure how old she was, it wasn't stated, but she had gray hair and it
She was
symbolized
older.
wisdom and it symbolized,
Mhm.
um, and she was beautiful,
She
honestly.
was.
You know what I'm
She
saying?
was
And that
beautiful.
beauty in aging as a woman,
It
there's
exuded.
nothing, she exuded beauty.
Yeah,
So beauty has nothing to do with wrinkles. Beauty has to do with your presence and your aura and how you carry yourself.
exactly. We definitely
Yeah,
have to reframe the way we view beauty in the society. I think we're so focused on beauty being currency, which it literally was. Like they
it
were
literally
in
was.
working in the beauty industry, at the sacrifice and expense of their health.
Mhm.
Whereas, who they were at their core, that woman was ugly.
Yes,
She was ugly.
ugly.
She killed
Ugly.
her husband.
Yeah,
I
she.
mean, I'm not gonna say he deserved it, but you know,
Yeah,
he
he
wasn't
was
great,
not a great person, but
you know.
I mean,
But you see how like the pursuit of beauty drove her to such a degree of madness? Because
madness.
not only did she kill her husband, she framed a woman
Yeah,
for killing her
framed a
husband.
woman. Yes.
And I feel
And
like in those, go ahead.
oh, also, I just love how it highlighted the idea that often a woman's worst enemy is another woman. Because when we were even talking about
Unfortunately,
this film, the only person that was able to actually lay hands on her while she was in her kickboxing era, knocking people out, was a woman. So it
yeah,
also shows that, and here's the beauty about it. When this whole scene happened, the woman that hit Patience caught her off guard. She wasn't expecting it. She was looking around, and that was the only time she was ever off her guard. Like she was always on it. So it just
all the
also
time she was
shows
on her feet.
that a woman hurting you is always off guard and always uncomfortable because you're looking at them as if we're in the same boat together.
Right,
Why would you, out of all people, be my enemy? And
exactly.
unfortunately, that's the case many a times. So
hmm Especially because not only did her husband kill Patience, but he was also very cruel to her. So I think in that
yes,
aspect, I mean, the whole time they had a terrible marriage. He was hitting her. He was with other women, younger women, gross, like half her age, half his age. So now she's really confused. Like this man did all this
no,
to you.
remember the woman killed Patience at the beginning of the movie. It was her the whole time. It was her the whole time.
Was it?
Yes,
Damn.
it was her.
Really?
Mhm. We can go back and watch it, but I swear it was.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
regardless.
You're good.
That
You're
woman
good.
was up to no good. That woman
She
was up
was
to no good.
always up to no
But we
good.
could, she was up to no good.
Yes.
Just for what though? And all this for a man at the end of the day though too, because like yes, it was because of her beauty, but she was doing all of this because her husband didn't think she was beautiful anymore.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's just
Her
so sick and
jealousy drove
twisted.
her to madness.
The madness, literally.
Mhm.
Like God forbid a woman
Yes.
scorned. But I what I really
Mhm.
liked about the characters that we see in the film, one, the fact that they're majority women, and two, the fact that we see such a contrast in all of their personalities. Like we have
Yes.
these two older women, and we see one acting as a guide for patients, and the other one literally being her biggest op. So
Her big
it's like
rock.
it just plays on the fact of, different stages women go through in life and, the different paths you can walk through because patience, she's kind of a balance of them both. When you think about it,
She
like
is.
she has her like id or her like, the side of her that's not really thinking clearly, and she could easily go down that path of
She could.
chasing beauty, but she could also go down a path of love and kindness and
Yes.
just focusing on nurturing your mind
Mhm.
and helping other people, and we see which
Yes.
side she chose at the end of the day. I mean, she's an
Exactly.
anti-hero, that's the whole point, but you
Mhm.
know
And
so
I think it also highlights the fact that, like you said, a lot of women will choose their roles in life. Like, think about it from the ages when she was considered, quote unquote, at her highest level of beauty. I'm sure she had no complaints of her husband. I'm sure she's okay with the way
of
she treated
course,
people. I'm sure
yeah.
she's okay because she benefited from said system. So, a lot of times when women do not benefit from the system any longer, that's when they turn to madness. And you see it in other ways of how they judge young women, how they
Mhm.
put the javel down on young women simply
Mhm.
because it's a level of jealousy and understanding that they know that they have lost the very said thing that they were fighting so hard to keep, not understanding that
Mhm.
time takes us all, baby.
Literally, and
That's
that's a
that.
beautiful thing.
And it's a
Aging is
beautiful
nothing but a
thing.
beautiful
It's a
process.
beautiful thing.
Um, so
Hmm.
yeah, And I'd like to point that out with the different types of women that we see as well. When patients did go to meet Ophelia when she was, rushed with the surge of power and, it was overwhelming for her,
Mhm.
she sought advice with Ophelia. One of my favorite quotes in the film when she was explaining, this whole transition for her and just trying to usher her into acceptance rather than fear.
Yeah,
We see she really hit a note when she told her, "You spent a lifetime caged. By accepting who you are, all of who you can be free, and freedom is power." And
beautiful.
that's just so beautiful to me because with the whole, identity crisis she was having, coming to terms with this newer self, this darker self, this lower self. She was running initially and she didn't
Yes.
really want any part of it. She was scared. She scared herself.
Yeah,
And I think that's a really beautiful thing because fear is not supposed to get in the way of what you're afraid of and what you're fighting. It's just supposed to usher you into a place of acceptance and you make room for that fear. So that way whatever is being blocked by the fear can find its way in and you can then conquer it. That is what it means to be fearless.
yes,
So I
yes.
think in this instance, it just so happened to be herself. She was afraid of herself because these traits that she had, they were just lying dormant. So when she was finally able to integrate them and let them be free without any judgment, she could finally really be herself and she could be free because
Literally.
authenticity is freedom.
Yes. And I think it's important too to understand that stepping into things that make you uncomfortable and things that force you to dig deep within yourself to figure out who you really are in this world are the things that build you and grow you and make you into your true self. Because
100%.
honestly, people spend a lifetime hiding who they are. People spend a lifetime trying to be somebody they're not to appease, in this case, patriarchy, to appease your
Mm.
family, to appease your friends, and things like that. So, it's very important. And I love that she really stepped into herself. And not only that, she didn't get the man, she didn't choose him. She didn't
She
want
didn't
the
want
man.
the man.
It
She
wasn't the
didn't want the
typical
man.
Cinderella story we were given. I mean, even at the beginning of the movie, we saw illusions. Is it illusions? That's not the right
Illusions?
word.
What are you thinking of?
I say like how basically at the beginning of the movie we saw she dropped her wallet and the man, Tom, I be calling him the man, y'all. I be forgetting his name. Um, So we saw him run and give her her wallet and it found her job because he had her wallet. And I thought this alluded to the Cinderella story. We're accepting
Mm.
her. Oh my gosh, he's so charming. He brought back, mind you, a shoe is the least a man could bring you. Okay,
No, literally, like
your
I needed to
shoe,
walk, don't I?
it's
You want me to be
your
barefoot?
shoe. He didn't even do anything. He just found one.
Can we? Because we could talk about Cinderella too. we
Talk about Cinderella the
can
whole
talk about Cinderella
and
too.
but I just loved how I know the author saw that and was like, yes, like it was just the perfect comparison. So yeah, so he brought her the wallet and she was so excited, and then she ended up standing him up the next day for a date.
Yeah,
So that was like the first instant we saw in this breaking away from this Cinderella story of what they try to feed women. And it has to do with is finding a man, but Patience, she understood her mission was far larger than a man.
of
It was about
course. Yeah,
self-acceptance and growth. And that man only helped her understand a part of her. And I'm glad she allowed herself to experience that, but she didn't make that her world. So,
exactly. I feel like all too often women are consumed by relationships and distracted from their goals.
yeah.
So it was so refreshing
Oh,
to close that movie out with her leaving that
with
man
her
where he was
leaving
at. And
the man.
no shade to Tom.
He's a
I
great guy.
loved Tom.
We like
He was a
Tom.
good guy. He was very accepting. He was like a great partner for her. He was, she was a little weird and he was like, hey, he was a freak too. Because if you like that, you a freak too. But that's not the point.
Definitely.
But ultimately, she decided to allocate time for herself because she
Mhm.
had just finally had freedom. And
Yeah,
I think that's something that we take advantage of as women sometimes. We completely forget that this freedom is something that was fought for.
yeah,
So to see her really choose herself after neglecting herself for all that time was the strongest thing she could have done,
yeah.
in my opinion.
And the
She
beauty
left
of
her man
it is that she did all that in her youth.
in her.
Did not allow her youth to be starved and depraved by a man, to just be, you wake up one day and you're 40 years old and you're trying to figure out who you are because you've been finding like following a man your whole life. So I just love that in that
Exactly.
moment she understood that her youth was for her and not for a man to conquer and take away from
Exactly. And that was another thing Ophelia mentioned. She said something along the lines of, you'll experience a freedom a lot of women never will,
her. Never will.
because we're so conditioned to just wake up, marriage, baby, and that's it. Boom, that's your
That's
life.
it.
When
Your
in
life,
reality, if you would just give yourself some time to really, because you have your whole life to
whole
be
life.
somebody's wife or somebody's mother, like you have your whole life. Like our value lies so much further away from the principles that we've been taught. So when you give yourself that time to explore, especially after literally being in a cage and confined to this rigid idea and this shell of a person of what a woman should be and how a woman should show up, it can only be, you can only go up from there. You're
Can
going to
only
come
go up
to a level
there.
of self-discovery that a lot of people won't
Yes.
embrace.
And I love that she felt like she owed it to herself to experience that, especially because she was literally caged in a job she didn't like, being a person she didn't want to be for so long. And I just love how
Yeah.
it stepped into this idea that women can literally be whoever you want to be. You can be free and you can be yourself and you can allow yourself to have self-discovery because you owe it to yourself.
And I feel like I have to say, I feel like that's another play on her stepping into her masculine, because that is
It
something
definitely
that I
is.
think as women, we are picking up on the fact that men will always put themselves first.
Always.
Men always choose themselves first. And honestly, I respect them for it.
Respect.
But it is constantly women
Me
who are
too.
being taught to put exactly respect. Respect. I got to. Dap you up, King. I got to respect that. But it is
Lovable.
constantly women who are taught, but it's because of how we're conditioned.
Yes.
Women are taught to be thinking about a man and a husband from like Disney since we're like two
I
years old.
mean,
Whereas men are constantly taught there's other fish in the sea. If you don't like this one, go get another one. So
yes.
it's like they're constantly at the forefront of their minds
Mhm.
is themselves. So it's like
And
you,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, I'm on a high right now.
Yeah, go ahead. Do your thing. Do your thing.
So it's just, I just thought it was so refreshing to see her choose herself. Like we
Yes.
needed that
And
for
I
sure.
love that we have the duality of her best friend in the beginning. Ooh, running out.
Was
Okay.
it? Uh-oh.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay. I love
Okay.
how we got to see the duality of her best friend in the beginning, who's telling her to actively chase a man. But as we see as the movie progresses, he was constantly chasing her. But even outside of him being a cop, he was always looking for her. Where's she at?
Yeah.
Talking to her about other people. Wow. She barely talked about that man. I don't
He
think
was
he really
not.
as
He
a
was such a
cop.
side
He
character.
was
It
such
was
a side
crazy.
character in her life.
But mhm.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Now that I think about it, it just makes me think about these are the only two relationships that we have in the movie. We have the
Yes.
relationship between the CEO and his wife, and the relationship between Patience and Tom. And you
Yes.
see the stark difference in the
Oh,
two. Like one is completely based off of superficial aspects, her beauty, his
yes.
money. It's all based off of power and greed and games. Whereas their connection, because even though she did decide to not be with him, she genuinely
She
cared
did
about
love
him.
him.
And she did love him. She did. And you can tell that he really liked her and he loved her.
Mhm.
So you can see how it was such a natural development and it was completely unfiltered. And it was so, they were both themselves. Like, even though she was like still figuring out who she was, he was okay with that. And that was part of, because I feel like that's part of the journey. You know, you
Yes.
have to figure out who you are. So he was just kind of taking his time with her and, you know, just going at her pace and what she was comfortable with as she was still figuring out who she was. And you can just see the difference in one, respect, and two, just how their relationships blossomed. And the fact that in the CEO's case, I forget her name, I'm sorry, but she was even though she hated her husband, she still wanted his validation so
So
bad.
bad.
Whereas Patience, she didn't care about that man's opinions.
No,
Not really.
not really.
Not really.
And I think it's just because of what you can tell what she valued and what he valued in her. And this is a great point. He told her one day, he was like, she was eating that tuna just. And it was just so funny because at the end she was like, sorry. And
Whoops.
it was just so cute. And I just
Literally.
loved how in that moment he looked at her and he was like, no, I love that you're different. And I love that he was able
Yeah.
to see her, not just because of how she ate, but because of just who she is as a person. And he respected that her being different was outside of the norm of what he expected a woman to be. And he understood that it
Mm.
was okay with her being who she was. And it also showed Like when she didn't be with him, he had to respect her at the end of the day because he knew who he was dealing with, a different woman.
Literally.
And I
And
think
I think
he
also,
respected her and loved her even so much
exactly. And I think part of that respect came from the fact that she never really hid who she was. Like, yeah, she was still figuring out who she was, but she didn't hide like the fact that she was weird and she was awkward, but she could also be really flirty and really,
more. Yeah,
forward. So it was like she was herself the whole time, even though she's like battling with herself. But I
yeah.
think for that reason, he respected her
He
because it's like, okay,
respected
you're not trying to put
her.
up a front. Because
Yes.
yeah, y'all ever see, I would always hear like girls talk about, I could never eat in front of my man. I
Girl, I don't care.
literally don't give a damn.
I don't.
I'll never forget, actually. Oh my God. Throwback. Sorry, I just got a lot. Okay, I'll never forget first date vibes
Uh-huh.
on the throwback, 16.
Yeah.
So we were at McDonald's. We went to the movies and then we went to McDonald's. And I ordered a Big Mac. I ordered a Big Mac and I
Big
ate
back,
that shit
big
the fuck
back.
up. I ate that shit up with extra lettuce and extra mac sauce too. And you know what he could do? All he could do is sit there and be like, damn, you scarfed that. Yes, I
Sure
did.
can put it away,
And
Lily.
I enjoyed it. And I
He
enjoyed it
did.
because who has time to be sitting here super hyper focused on what you look like? Like eat your
And
meal.
also, I hate that we have this idea that women have to put on a front in the beginning, and then when you get comfortable, now you're real
And then,
personality.
right now, you can just be
Why
yourself.
can I not
Like,
be myself off jump?
exactly. Like, if you have to
What am I
lure
performing
someone
for?
in with a fake persona, do they even really like you?
They
No, they
like
don't.
you. No, they don't. Immediately, no.
You know, they don't even know
No,
you.
they don't.
Yeah.
And I hate that
So,
women feel that pressure or that they
I
kind of,
know.
well, again, society kind of tells you what a woman should be, how you should act, how you should look. And I love that Patience, because she's a cat, is just so impulsive and she eats crazy and
Exactly.
she's kind of like wild in herself. But I love that it's still inherently feminine because even when
It
she set
is.
up, she said, I'm just a girl. It was like real, like I'm just a girl, but yeah, I sure can't put it away.
No,
Like,
literally.
well, why can
I
those two,
took care up alive.
right? Do we not eat?
Exactly. Like
You
what?
know?
So I
Oh,
just feel like it was in those like micro expressions of her impulsivity that we could see her start to accept just who she really was and just unabashedly be herself.
yes,
So I think that's just overall great message in the film. Great
great message.
message.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Okay,
I
well,
love that movie. It was
like another
tea.
time. Any closing remarks?
Okay, that's all our time. Well, I had so much fun talking about this with you guys.
So much.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Heard our two
Learn
cents.
something, and I hope you
We
feel like
doing
more
something.
empowered to be a woman and step into
Exactly.
your true identity and be yourself.
Integrate that shadow self. I will leave you with this one quote. It's one of my favorite from the movies. I don't know how much time we have left. Catwomen are not contained by the rules of society.
I love
Never
it.
forget that.
Never forget.
Period. All
Period.
right.
Bye,
Bye.
y'all.